Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone, ending Week 7 and going into Week 8. My name is Drew. With me, as always, is my co-host Dave. David, how are we doing today?
Doing just fine. It was a pretty good weekend of football. Had some exciting college games, and we had a lot of blowouts on the high school side. But you had a couple of good games there that as teams are kind of feeling each other out, and we got a good rivalry week. I can't say that. I'm terrible at saying that, but a lot of rivals are going to be playing this week coming up. So I'm excited for it's, unfortunately though, the season's like winding down.
Yeah, we have two more games, 2 more weeks in this regular season, and then we head into postseason, which we'll be covering a little bit. Well, it depends. We'll probably be covering most of it. But at the same time, yeah, we're ending this regular season, and, like you said, rivalry weeks are coming up. It's not easy to say. Are coming up, and there are some games I'm really keying into, but we did have some big rivalries this week, including the Battle of the Boot Heel, things like that. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Let's start off with Malden and New Madrid County Central. Ended that game 14-62. Yeah,
New Madrid pretty much dominated that game. Malden hit a big pass play, a 74-yard play from Cannon Brown to Mathis. Benford returned a kick for a touchdown. Kind of Malden's MO. They hit a couple of big plays, but really couldn't get anything going offensively. I think they had 150 total yards. Their offensive line doesn't give much protection for the quarterbacks to make anything happen. Running game, they don't have much of a running game. So it's pretty much what we thought. New Madrid had over 400 yards rushing in the first half. Yeah, they just ran through the Malden defense. Rossano had like 275 yards or more, 4 touchdowns. Had they just dominated the line. I think they threw 3 passes, completed 1 for a touchdown, but just didn't. New Madrid didn't have to get into the playbook very deep. A lot of jet sweeps, a lot of just off tackle plays, and New Madrid just pretty much did what they wanted on the ground. And defensively, they were pretty good. They got some guys that had been injured. They got back. Kylan Robinson was back. Jaquan Jones was back. Their defensive backs were pretty healthy, and they kind of shut down Malden with the exception of a couple of big plays.
Now, as far as so Malden, their season's kind of over at this point, 0-7, and we've been calling it a rebuild season. What do you think Malden has to do going into next year?
They've got a lot of young players, so I think they've got to get stronger. Number one, I think the offensive line, you just don't see a lot of strength in there. Every game I've seen them play, their offensive line is just not real strong. I think getting in the weight room and getting bigger and stronger and just keeping everybody together. I mean, they play a lot of freshmen, a lot of sophomores. Cannon Brown, who plays some quarterback for them, he kind of rotates in and out with Redfoot. Cannon Brown's a freshman. He's a pretty good player. You have Anniser, who's the running back. He's a big kind of running back. He's got some potential. I think they're going to be okay. Just stick together, get bigger, get stronger, stay the course. Find an offensive plan that works for you. Use your athletes, and I think they'll figure that out. And I think that's the key for Malden. I don't think they're I think they've got a chance to win this weekend. And I think that'll be a big key for them too. If they can just get a win this year, have something to build on as you get toward next year. They might even get a couple of wins, because if you look at their district, they've got a 9-team district. So if they're that 8-9 game, they might have to play Louisiana, who's really not very good. They might get a Chaffee that they might get to play. One of those 2 teams, they might get to play one of those 2, and they can beat those teams. So you might get a couple of wins this year, and that really catapults you into next year. Get some positive momentum and just get stronger, and I think they'll be all right.
Yeah, you've kind of had to see that Tristan Pulley has kind of had to look at kind of a sandbox to work with, and I think he's starting to find the pieces that he's going to bring in next year. So to your point, I mean, yeah, if you get that win, that's definitely going to probably accentuate those key points that you're trying to focus on. But for right now, I mean, Malden's just going to have to keep grinding.
Yeah, patience. Just be patient, and I think they'll start seeing some good things come.
Next game on the listing, Jackson at Sykeston, ended that game 55-12.
Yeah, that was what everybody expected. Jackson's just good, and Sykeston just can't match up with them right now. Drew Parsons threw 4 touchdowns. They dominated from start to finish. 12 straight loss for Sykeston to Jackson. It's been I think 2013 was the last time they beat them. It's been a while, and Jackson just is dominating the Bulldogs, and it just happened on Friday night. But Sykeston's got some winnable games coming up, and so I think their big key from that game was just staying healthy, and then coming in full strength against New Madrid and Charleston, who they have coming up. They're both kind of big rival games for Sykeston. So I think was the most important thing for Sykeston, is to get out of there with being healthy. And if you're Jackson, you just want to keep rolling, and they did. They did what they needed to do. Got out of there with a big win and moving on.
Yeah, as far as this game goes, I mean, it's more of a detriment to Sykeston that the size of their school and location and proximity to Jackson is kind of what leads them to play this game. Because, like you said, against a team like New Madrid and Charleston, I figure it would be closer. I don't know how winnable those games are for Sykeston, but Sykeston's been improving throughout the season. So definitely this is more just, kind of sucks that you had to play this game, but it is a game that you have to play. Mm-hmm. Moving on, Cape Central at Farmington ended that game 54-14.
Yeah, Cape Central, that was got a get-right game for them. Mm-hmm. They needed a big performance. They kind of came out. They did what they were going to do. They ran the ball. You had Zaire Thomas, Keshawn Boyd. They both had 3 touchdowns. You kind of got back to what Cape Central does. You run the ball with those two. You play good defense, and Farmington's a good team, and they hammered Farmington. So that's a good win. Kind of good to get them back right, but they really needed that after that Jackson performance, just to, I think, for their own psyche as much as anything.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm too still in Cape Central's corner on things. That Jackson game, because every game Cape Central's played against even mutual teams that Jackson's played, they've been very comparable. So it's one of those things where it's like, I think Jackson would still beat Cape again. But I don't know. I just don't know if Cape just didn't bring their A game. If you missed that one PAT at the start of the game and it just gave your whole team the yips for the rest of the game. But I don't know. I still think they're a very good team, and they can prove that against teams like Farmington. But they're 6-1, but that one, you just have to keep circling that one over and over, because it's just like, why do you lose that game? Why was it not closer? Yeah,
it's the college equivalent of Ohio State, Michigan. Honestly, it's you got the Michigan struggling to beat Ohio State now, but Ohio State struggling to beat Michigan, but for the longest time it was the other way around, and it just seemed like every year it was just something happened, and even if they had the better team, they weren't able to win that game. So I feel like it's a lot like that rivalry, and right now, just no matter what Cape Central does, they just can't figure out how to beat Jackson. But they have, they're having a great year. You continue to feed your two running backs in Thomas and Boyd, because they're very good. Just continue to feed them and see what happens when you get to districts. We've documented how tough their district's going to be, but man, that's good luck for them. But right now they're having a good year, and you just kind of have to just erase that Jackson game and just kind of move on.
Yeah, well. Can't erase the Jackson game, but at the same time,
in your mind, you can. Still going to be on that record.
Moving on. Dexter is now 7-0 with this win against Kennett, 53-0.
Yeah, they just dominated that game. I mean, it's kind of what we expected. Another one that was just, they're just a lot better than Kennett right now. One thing that surprises me about Dexter, though, is just how many weapons they have. If you look at the offensive leaders for Southeast Missouri, you don't see a lot of Dexter guys on the offense. You see Jet Graham's on there, but you really don't see a lot of big numbers or anything, because you really don't have one guy. It's so many different guys. Like Leo Michael McDonald was back. He got 2 big touchdowns this week.
2 touchdowns touchdowns for 120 yards.
Yeah, and he's missed some time with injury, and you just add him to an already potent offense with Jet Grahams and you got Howard as your quarterback who does a good job, and I mean you got all kinds of different guys running the ball, and you're throwing to different receivers, and there's just not one guy that I think you can really focus on that team. They just have so many weapons, and I think it's Ibrahim. Is that his?
I believe so.
How you say it? He had a big night. He had not really had big nights, but he had an interception, a couple of touchdown catches. I'm like, you just have different guys stepping up every night, and that just shows how balanced of a team they are and how tough they are to defend. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you got guys like Nolan Alford. I mean, he's got like 720 sacks, I think, at this point. He's constantly just wreaking havoc on the other team. You got all kinds of good players on defense too, and just one player after another. They're just really balanced, and I noticed that like every game is just somebody different stepping up. It seems.
Yeah, my biggest complaint, and it was kind of just nitpicking at this point, was for that Southern Boone Dexter game, like that was their most intense game. Of course, I said Jackson Howard was, he had a weaker game than everybody else in the offense. Not against Kennett, because I think he threw for 6 touchdowns. So, it clearly they've got, like you said, weapons on just every side of the ball at this point, and they don't lead the pack anywhere, but they're a jack of all trades team, and sometimes that's exactly what you need. Because you can have a defense that can just wear down an offense, and you can have a running back that can just plow through everything. But when you're so complete like this is where you can put up these big point totals, and you're 7-0. Nobody else in the area is 7-0 right now, right. So it really shows.
And the thing too is like, so you got a good running back in Jet Grahams. Well, he doesn't have to carry the ball 25, 30 times a game. Like a lot of these running backs for a lot of different teams, he's not taking the beatings that a lot of these other guys are, because he's not having to carry it as much. He's still having a great year. He's putting up some pretty good numbers, but you can save him for those meaningful games down the stretch. He's still fairly fresh as compared to some of these other teams that are running their guys 25, 30 times a game, and they're taking beatings. It's a big key for Dexter to be able to do that, and I think that's good that you have different weapons like they have. On the flip side, Kennett, they're kind of just looking for they're looking for answers right now on offense. They're just really trying to find something. Ty Jones, their quarterback's not bad. He had I think 275 yards passing a week ago. He had I think 85 against Dexter. But he just had no time to throw. But I think they've got something to work with there. He's just a junior, so they got him for another year. So a lot of young players there. They were just outmatched this week, but I think they're going to get better.
Yeah, I think I am surprised with this point total, because I thought a little bit that maybe Jamerson was going to kind of, let up on the gas a little bit with your starters. Not to say that, this was kind of a gimme game for Dexter at this point, but I was surprised that it seemed like, no, prepare for Park Hills coming up, of course, but, Jamerson doesn't let off the gas at all, it seems like.
No, especially in a rival game. Kennett put it on Dexter a lot there for a few years, and put it on him pretty good. I know a lot of these kids weren't there then, but the fans remember. So the fans don't have a problem, I don't think, with putting up those numbers. And I've always been under the mindset of, look, if you don't want them to score, stop them. And it wasn't. 53-0. It's not a score that you want, but it's not like he was putting up 70, 80, 90 points on them. He wasn't going too crazy. But at the same time, if you're Dexter, you've got to prepare for your next game. Yeah. And you've got to do what you need to do for your team. And the other team needs to worry about their business. So I don't have any issue with it. And as long as everybody's healthy, and seems like Dexter's getting guys healthy and things, so that you want to be healthy for next week against Park Hills for sure.
Let's move on to another 50-0 game. Basically, Father Tolton Regional Catholic at Portageville, 56-0.
That game got off to a bad start for Portageville. Bad snap, safety. And then Father Tolton, they can throw the ball. Their quarterback is really good, and they've got a receiver who just makes some great catches. There's a catch that he makes in the second quarter, an over-the-shoulder catch, just kind of pulls it in. It's outstanding. Their Father Tolton just beat the brains off of Portageville. That's just a tough game for Portageville to schedule on homecoming. it's just tough. They were just completely outmatched. And but Father Tolton, that was a good. They're a good team.
Going into this week, I didn't really know anything about Father Tolton, but everybody I asked about it, they're just like, well, Father Tolton's a really good team. It's like, so apparently that's an apparent thing, but I'm really surprised by this score, regardless, because Porterville doesn't typically lose that bad, and they definitely don't lose that bad at home.
Yeah, they did not play well. On top of Father Tolton being good, they just didn't play well. They made a lot of mistakes. Like I said, you start off the game with 2 bad snaps. So that's stuff you don't see a lot from them. But and sometimes on those homecoming weeks, that stuff happens. You're not really focused on the game. You've got parades, you've got homecoming queens, you've got dances, you've got a lot of stuff. Sometimes teams kind of lose their focus and don't really. Their preparation isn't what it is on normal weeks. I'm not saying that's what happened, but you do see it happen from time to time in homecomings. But they just did not play well. Things kind of got snowballing, and they just could not. They just could not get. They just could not get right in that game at all.
It's unfortunate, but hey, any given Friday at this point.
That's right.
Moving on, East Prairie at Kelly ended that game 40-20.
Yeah, that's a very physical game. Both those teams are physical teams. East Prairie's pretty good. Tavion Ware, we were talking about guys that carry the ball a lot. He carried the ball 38 times for 197 yards. 38 times. That's a lot in a game. And the thing is, for me, I think he's even better on defense. He made a hit against New Madrid County Central that kind of changed the game, and he's just kind of a difference maker on defense. He's a hard hitter, makes plays. He always seems to be in the right spot. He's just a really good football player. And then you got Connor Markham too for East Prairie. He's really good. He had 120 yards and 3 touchdowns on 6 carries. They're just a really hard-nosed team. Kelly just they were just a little bit outmatched. Their offensive line just really is struggling right now for Kelly, and Skylar Still is really talented, but he's got to have some time to throw, and he just really doesn't have that right now.
Yeah, one key player is not going to make a team that like we said, right. But going into it, I think East Prairie is turning out to be a much better team than everybody thought they were.
Yeah, and they're well coached. Coach Penrod's came in there. He kind of changed the culture there. But they're a really hard-nosed team. They run out of that power offense, which a lot of teams are running out of. I've been seeing a lot of teams run out of that. We'll talk about Chaffee later. They ran out of that the other Friday night. That little power set where you've got three guys to your right or your left, and then you snap the ball and you run behind them. That's kind of I think they call it the mush offense in East Prairie. But it's a lot. Penrod kind of started that last year, and now a lot of teams are kind of piggybacking off that.
Yeah, if you're going to replicate his style, that's a good one to pick up.
Oh yeah.
And like we've been saying it, Penrod had something going at Porterville that a lot of teams would try to replicate. Mm-hmm. So him taking that to East Prairie right now, I think definitely in the next coming years, 5-2 is a great record to have for a new coach. I think it's only going to get better.
Yeah, and East Prairie's biggest thing is they've got to stay healthy because they're not a very deep team. I think they've only got maybe 25 players. Mm-hmm. So they're not a very deep team. They just have to stay healthy. That's the biggest key for them. But I think they can make some noise in districts.
Yeah, I know a couple locals from East Prairie, and they said the biggest thing is it's a culture thing too, is mm-hmm. that for a while now they've just kind of been well, we're not really good at football. We're not a football school. And it's no, turn yourself into a football school mm-hmm. at that point. If you've got the weapons and you've got the coach that's bringing that to you, start to try and buy in. And I think a 5-2 record coming in this season, hey, they're starting to build, and right. that's great.
Yeah, and you talk about weight rooms. Obviously Penrod, he did a great job of that, getting them in their weight room, getting Porterville bigger, stronger, and he's a big proponent of that, and he'll get that going at East Prairie as well. So they could get only better, because they're already a hard-nosed physical team, and you get them in the weight room, get them bigger, stronger. That's just going to make them even better.
All right, moving on. Chaffee is on the board. Chaffee is now 1-6 with a 70-28 victory over Veritas Christian.
Nobody doubted that. That was Chaffee. Come on. I watched this game this morning, as a matter of fact, and they just gashed. I don't know how many. I want to see the stats for this game. I don't know how many yards rushing they had, but they had to have 500 or more. I mean, they were just gashing them for huge run after huge run after huge run. And they got in that power formation like we were talking about with the Portersville and Coach Penrod ran last year. He's running the East Ray this year. Chaffee was running a similar thing to it. And they just were just gashing Veritas. And it was like 28-21 with like 4 seconds gone in the second quarter. I mean, just nobody was playing any defense early. Chaffee made some adjustments. We were able to get some stops. And but Veritas could not stop Chaffee at all. They just ran it down their throats, did whatever they wanted to offensively, and good for them. Good for them. A big win for Chaffee. I'm glad they got that because you never want to go winless, and that was a big win for them.
Yeah. Hey, good on you. I mean, hanging 70 on a team is always impressive, just regardless. But hey, getting your first one in the season with a score differential that big, I mean, that's got to feel good.
Yeah. I mean, if you're going to do it big. And that's what they did. They're like, they took out some aggression. I think they probably had as many points in one game as they'd had the entire season. But yeah, they were very impressive. They looked good against this Veritas team, which I believe is out of O'Fallon. They just, like I said, did anything they wanted to offensively, opened up huge holes, and their running backs just outran Veritas. That was just a great performance for Chaffee, and I'm sure that they're feeling good this week going into the rivalry game with Scott City. That's a great way to go into that game.
Now, I posed this question at the very start of this, talking about Malden. What do you think Chaffee's going to have to do moving forward?
I think Chaffee just has to stick with it. I mean, they're a really small school. They don't have a ton of players. It's just, some years you're going to have talent, some years you're not. You just try to build it up. I think they're doing the right thing. Coach Altamont, I think is how you say his name. He does a really good job. They're very run centric. And he knows that they're going to have to win games by running the football, maybe not necessarily throwing it a ton. They're going to have to grind it out, and you just kind of get guys in the program, keep them in the program, and you hope for those years like they had last year with the Levi McKinneys and where you have some really good athletes in that group. Chaffee's not a very big school, so it's just tough to get that talent year after year. It's not like they're Jackson drawing from a ton of kids. So some years you're going to have the talent, some years you aren't. And For Chaffee, it's just be patient. They've gotten out of the SEMO conference, so they're able to schedule some teams like Veritas who they can match up against. So that helps them as well. I think scheduling maybe a little bit teams that they match up better against. So I think they're going to be okay.
Moving on, let's talk about the Battle of the Boot Heel. Crothersville at Hayti ended that game 48-16.
Shenanigans. Lots of shenanigans down there. We talked about this game off air last week about how it's a rivalry where those two teams don't like each other, and it was obviously evident this week. They started the game early, so you hopefully don't have problems, but that didn't help anything. There were still issues. Unfortunately for Hayti, J.C. Ford got a helmet-to-helmet hit. It was. I think Hayti thinks it was probably a sketchy hit. It's just, who knows? It's just kind of tough to tell on video, but he definitely got hit hard and had to leave the game, didn't return. And so that hurt Hayti. They were down 21-0 at the time. So they were already kind of behind it a little bit. Crothersville is just good though, man. They Sammy Bryant, Jermonte Alexander, they just put on a show. Mm-hmm. Sammy Bryant, 11 carries, almost 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then Jermonte Alexander, 13 carries, 169 yards, 2 touchdowns. And he had a big 33-yard catch early in the first quarter where he just made an outstanding catch, just leaped over the defender. They're both so athletic. Crothersville just dominated the game through all the shenanigans and all the issues that I'm sure people have read about. Crothersville was able to stay focused and win that game. I do feel bad for J.C. Ford because he's a really good player.
Yeah.
I was noting as I was watching the first of that game about how good he really is, and he's just a sophomore. He's going to be really good.
Yeah. Hopefully, he's fine and everything turns out fine. That scary situation we put in. Mm-hmm. No, Crothersville, I mean, like I said with Cape Central, that 6-1 record it's an oddity because it's one of those where it's like I circle that one and I say, okay, if that Valley Catholic game went a little bit differently, if the weather wasn't the way it was, could you be 7-0 right now? Mm-hmm. Because Crothersville, they're such a talent stacked team that I feel like they're one of the best teams in the area, obviously.
Yeah, I think Valley is just really good. I mean, they put it on Park Hills Friday night, I think 50-0. They're just good. So, but Crothersville is good too, and I would like to see them on a night that it's not a monsoon, where you can use your athleticism maybe a little bit more. And maybe kind of, if that game's a little bit closer, then you never know what happens. A player or two goes a different way, then you never know. But they're really good, and I would love to see them play Valley again in that district. And there's probably a good chance that's going to happen, because I think those are the two clearly best teams in that district. There's some good teams in that district. I mean, I think Scott City is like the 7th seed in that district right now. And Scott City's not a terrible team, but I mean, that's a pretty good 7 seed for a district. So, Crowsville's just really good.
Yeah, I can't see any reason why they don't probably move forward into districts. Just feeling super confident with themselves. But moving on to the game that we covered on A Corp Sports, Charleston at Scott City. We ended that game 44-35. This was probably one of the most exciting games in the area, I would say. Yeah,
I think it by far was. I mean, it was they were two evenly matched teams, it seemed like. I thought the biggest difference was the 2 touchdowns that Charleston was able to score right there at the end of the first half. I thought that kind of changed the entire game. They scored those 2 touchdowns. Trez Clark with the big run, and then the pass from Kirby to Bernard Betts, who I think Bernard Betts, he has got to be like one of the underrated players in the area. He's just like a utility knife. He can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, he's definitely a sleeper, because you kind of forget that he's there until he just makes a big play. And it's just like, oh, well,
he just makes plays.
Yeah. It was so exciting to see Charleston. Charleston has been a sleeper team, and Justin Hutchings, like as a coach too, like he's doing a great job, obviously. Yeah. And I think it's because of their record last year. I think it was 2-8. That's in my brain, but I'm not exactly sure. I
think you're right.
So coming off of that, I mean, I think everybody was a little bit down on Charleston, just being like, okay, we're not really expecting much from you. And I think he's taking that in stride of just being like, I've got my guys, I've got my weapons, I know how to coach. So I'm just going to surprise everybody. And, he told some of us at the office, he said, just make sure those football guys on the podcast keep saying that we're not going to win, because we're winning every game so far.
Well, Coach, I had you at the early beginning of the year. Go back and listen to one of the first ones. I said that they're going to be better than what people think. They're a lot better than I thought they were going to be. I thought they would be better than what people thought, but I wasn't thinking that they would be 5-2 at this point. Really not. They're just a good football team, and Coach Hutchings has been there for quite a while as an assistant, and then now as a head coach. But he does a really good job with them, and he puts his athletes in the right spots. And that's just what, I mean, if you can do that as a coach, it doesn't matter what your X's and O's are. You put them in the right spot, and he does that year after year. And, they just did a good job. Scott City just couldn't get off the field on 4th down. They just, they just couldn't get off the field. And, Charleston just kept making things happen. Scott City kept battling. They fought to the end. They just, and they gave up that. It really was kind of closer than the score was, because that last touchdown run, I think Scott City kind of sold out on that play to try to get a big stop, and it obviously they broke it, but that was just a good football game.
Yeah, I think one of the key points I would say about Charleston is their defense is that grind you down defense. At the same time, the pocket pressure that they put on Scott City the entire time, just it really played to their advantage, because those interceptions they got, that was purely just because quarterbacks have to rush out of the pocket. They make a mistake. They throw it a little bit too far, a little bit too short. Charleston just capitalized on that.
Yeah, and they've got that speed in the secondary. You better put it on point, or they're going to be there to make those mistakes. Pay. I tell you what, they've got such speed all across their team. It's just tough to match up against, and Scott City just wasn't able to do it. But Charleston just keeps getting better and better, and they've got a big game this week coming up. You talk about the rivalries and stuff. It's a good rivalry they have with East Prairie, and that's going to be a hard-nosed team against a team with athletes all over the place. That's going to be a fun game.
Talking about rivalries and just kind of shifting into our next topic, let's talk about power rankings really quick. So my number, obviously, 1 through 4, all the same. Jackson, Cape Central, Dexter, Crothersville.
Same. Yeah, that's going to be. I think we're going to be that way through the rest of the year.
That's pretty much how it is. Number 5, Charleston.
I have Charleston 5 as well. They keep moving up.
Number 6, East Prairie.
I have the same. but you know that it's funny though, because we've kind of been different for a while. For our top 4 has been about the same, but now 5 and 6 are about the same. Everything's kind of and I would say we're probably pretty close on these other ones too.
My number 7, I took Scott City.
I took New Madrid, so we're a little bit different there.
Okay, well, New Madrid's my number 8.
And Scott City is my number 8.
So we got that flipped. My number 9, I took Hayti.
And my number 9, I took Portageville.
My number 10, I took Portageville.
And my number 10 was Hayti. Although I have right here, I scribbled it out. I had Sykeston. Sykeston's getting better. They are, but they just don't have the wins yet. They just don't have, I mean, they've got a win over Crystal City and Malden. Though those 2 wins are not as good as Hayti beating Scott City. It's just not. And, if Sykeston were to get a win over New Madrid or Charleston, obviously they would move in. But I think eye test tells me that, I think they may be better than Hayti and Portageville, eye test. But until you do it on the field, they just don't have the wins.
Exactly. I mean, I'm kind of circling that end of year New Madrid Portageville game just to kind of see okay, I need some finalized judgment on these 2 teams. Yeah. But Hayti, like you said, that win against Scott City, that's great for them. But now it's starting to be can you really continue hanging off of that? Because I need to see more.
Right. And Scott City continuing to lose these games, that doesn't help that win. That win doesn't look as good now as it did when it happened. So yeah, they keep kind of dropping down. I mean, they're a young team. They're a young Class 1 team. And so you look at Sykeston, if they were to match up, you would think that Sykeston would probably be the favorite just because they're bigger, have bigger kids, a lot more kids to draw from. You would think, but I mean, Hayti's got the better wins right now. So that's why I'm keeping them in my top 10. And, we'll see next week. Hopefully JC Ford's back. I think that's a big key for them too. I think they would have, I think that game against Crothersville would have been a little bit different had Ford played the entire game.
But I am, to that point, I am surprised that Hayti did get 16 points even after he went out of the game. Yeah,
the guy they brought in, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he didn't look terrible. But you could just tell he just, JC just brings a different intangible, and they had a few mistakes that got them down 21-0, but they were moving the ball when Ford got hurt, and I believe they finished that drive off with points even after he left the game. Hayti was kind of motivated there for a little bit, but then reality kind of sets in. Your quarterback's not there, and Crothersville's athleticism, which we talked about, they're really good. That just kind of took over. Crothersville had clearly the better team, but I think it would have been a little bit closer had Ford been in the game.
Sure. All right, let's move on to games next week. Starting off with New Madrid County Central at Sykeston.
These 2 teams don't like each other. We've said that a lot for a lot of these games. This is a rivalry game. I saw them play in the Jamboree, and New Madrid looked clearly better. I believe in the Jamboree they scored maybe three times against Sykeston's 1 or something like that. But they just looked better. They looked like they had athletes on the edge that could get free, and they had speed that Sykeston just didn't have. My gut is telling me to take Sykeston, but I'm going to go with what I've seen, and I'm going to take New Madrid in this one. But I think it's going to be a close game. I think this game is going to be high scoring, and I think it's going to be maybe the last team that has the ball.
So I'm also going to take New Madrid, but to that point, I'm gonna say Sykeston. I'm hanging off of this, but they're that close game against Poplar Bluff too. Mm-hmm. That's something I got to keep thinking about. And I mean, I know they had a big loss to Jackson, but they hung more points on Jackson than Cape Central did. So that's got to mean something.
Sykeston looks better, and that's kind of why my gut's telling me to take Sykeston in this game, because I believe they are better. New Madrid's kind of coming into their own though offensively. They're healthy. They seem to be healthy. So I don't know. Again, it's a toss up, and I'm sure that Sykeston's going to be motivated by, hey, they're picking against us and everything, and good. I mean, use whatever you can, but I just go back to what I saw in the Jamboree, and New Madrid just looked better in that game. And I know it was early, but I'm going to say that New Madrid wins this one close.
I think what's going to end up happening is I'm going to watch this game back, and then all of a sudden Sykeston's going to throw a pass downfield that miraculously gets caught, and then they're going to run it in for a touchdown, and everybody's going to be surprised. When Sykeston won this game, at the same time, I'm going to pick New Madrid.
Yeah. But it wouldn't shock either one of us if Sykeston wins this. I mean, I think it's a very evenly matched game. It's going to be a fun game to watch.
Yeah. Moving on, Veritas Christian at Malden. I think this might be Malden's Chaffee moment.
It could be. I believe this game's on Saturday afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. You're going to get, if you're in Malden and go out to this game, I support Malden. I think they get the win. I think they break this 30-game losing streak, get their first win since 2021, get the ball to Dobbins, get the ball to Mathis on these jet sweeps, because Veritas Christian can't catch you. Keep it out of the air. Just run those. I hope they run those jet sweeps and just run it up the middle. Just get the ball to your athletes on the edges. I don't think they can catch you, and I think you can score all day on them. From what I saw from the tape from the Chaffee game. And if you do that, I think Malden wins this game, and Malden, breaks this skid that they've been on.
I think Malden needs this game.
Yes.
This is one of those situations where it's just like, if you're going to do it, this would be the week to do it. Try your best to get that win. Just not just for the sake of like the team, but for the town too. Cause it's just like, basketball, you do pretty okay. Mm-hmm. Football, you used to make statements. Now you got to make a statement that, hey, we're still here, because, 2 seasons without a win. Circumstances being what they were, that was hard to go through.
Yeah.
And you're kind of in a proving season now. I know we keep saying you're in a rebuild, but getting a win in your rebuild, that's important too. And I think Malden, this is a need to win.
Yeah, 30 losses in a row. I don't even know if these seniors that are playing now have gotten a win. If they were freshmen. Mm-hmm. That's, man. Hopefully they just get a win. I think, you need to break the skid, and this is the game that you can do it. Just seeing what Chaffee did to them on the ground, man. And Malden is much faster than Chaffee. Just get the ball to your playmakers and just watch them go.
Moving on, let's talk about Jackson at Miller Career Academy. I don't know anything about Miller Career Academy. But it's Miller Career Academy with Vashon.
Yeah, I believe so.
So I'm assuming it's a St. Louis team.
Yeah, they're from St. Louis. They're one of the inner city teams up there. I think Jackson should win this game. Miller Career's had some good teams in the past. I know I've seen them play in the playoffs once or twice against some local teams. But I think Jackson's going to have too much for them. I don't think Miller Career is anything like a Cardinal Ritter or an Edwardsville. So I think Jackson takes care of business and continues to roll and then kind of building their resume here toward districts.
Yeah. What do you think Jackson's chances are in districts right now?
It looks like it's going to be either them or Seckman, and they've kind of handled Seckman in the past. Seckman looks a little bit better this year, but I think either one of them can come out of districts. I don't think Jackson makes it much further than winning districts. I think if they do win districts, I think they lose in the next round. But heck, just getting a district championship, that's a great year.
Yeah, that's more than most people can do. Yeah,
but I think it's between them and Seckman in their district, and I think that they've got just as good a chance as Seckman does. That they played a tougher schedule than Seckman with Edwardsville and Cardinal Ritter. But Seckman looks good this year, but I think a toss-up, I think, for either one of them.
I do think it's funny the kind of deflation that those 2 losses had on Jackson at the start. Maybe not to the team, but just like some of the people around the area, mm-hmm. the reactions were just like, this isn't the Jackson Indians of old.
Yeah,
but
that's what we said.
At the same time, they look more dominant than any team in the area. So, if I get to see the apex of Jackson being a Jackson again, I don't know what that's even supposed to look like.
Yeah, just sometimes it's more telling about our area of football as opposed to just Jackson. We kind of hang our hats on Jackson because they are so good year after year. They've won a state title and in a big class of football, which doesn't happen very often. But we kind of hold, like they're our crown jewel around here, where other areas have a lot of good teams that are very similar to Jackson. So I think, and then when we see Jackson go up and just get hammered by an Edwardsville and get hammered by Cardinal Ritter, it's like, man, I think it all kind of deflates all of our balloons for just kind of the area. Is not just Jackson, but just for the entire area, because they kind of hold the torch for the area. And so we want them to go and do well in those games. And when they don't, it's just like, oh man, they're not very good. We're trying to look for excuses. Well, they're just not good this year, but maybe the other teams are just really good too. So
sure. Yeah, sure. To me, it's weird that everybody puts that pressure on Jackson, because they do kind of feel like they're more of a college team at this point.
Yeah, their tradition, what they've done the last 20 years or plus is just different. The what they have going up there is just different than any other school around, and they are the epitome of a football school. Mm-hmm. They live and die with football. If you've ever been to the pit on a Friday night up there, it's a great atmosphere, and it's just different. And you go to different games in different parts of the state. Your web cities out west around Springfield, you have a lot of good teams out there. It's very similar to what they have out there, and it's just it's just a different feel for Jackson football than it is other football around the area.
So next up, let's talk about Live for Life at Cape Central.
I've seen Live for Life play a couple times in the last few years. They came down and would play New Madrid in the playoffs and stuff. They're very athletic. I don't think that they're going to have enough to beat Cape Central, but I think they can cause them some problems. I think that a couple of the Live for Life players, I think, have went to different schools this last year, so they're not what they've been the last couple of years, but they're still not a terrible team. Their athleticism will cause Cape some problems, but I think Cape still gets through this game and wins pretty easily.
Yeah, Cape Central, like we've talked about, they've got weapons on every side of the ball too. Their one loss notwithstanding, against every other team, they've shown that, they're one of the best teams in the area as well. So I think for this game especially, because I saw that New Madrid County Live for Life game, and, Live for Life at that point, they dominated New Madrid, but that was because New Madrid only had 2-3 key players that they could work with, but Cape Central is a much more completed team. Mm-hmm. So I think, yes, it's going to be closer than a lot of other Cape Central anyone games, but I think Cape Central is probably going to come through this with the win. Moving on, Portageville at Crothersville.
I think Crothersville continues to roll. From what I've seen from Portageville, they're kind of dropping in my on my list. But Crothersville, man, I don't know who Portageville is going to have to stop Bryant or Alexander. They're just so dominant, and the offensive line for Crothersville, again, I always go back to the offensive lines, but their offensive line is very under the radar, but they are good. They're real good. They open up some holes for Bryant and Alexander, and you're not going to have those type of yards if you don't have a good offensive line. I just don't think Portageville can match up with them. I think Crothersville rolls.
Yeah, what Portageville has in physical strength, Crothersville has in both that and athletic talent for speed. I think Crothersville's biggest matchup would be like Charleston or Hayti, and they've beaten both those teams now. So I don't really, like you said, I don't really foresee Portageville having an answer to stop Crothersville. But, at the same time, Crothersville's got to stop Portageville's run, and I'm sure they can do that, but at the same time, that's Portageville's saving grace, is that they've got that smash mouth football running through. So if they can do that, I think they're going to hang more points than other teams will. But at the same time, I don't see Crothersville losing this game.
Yeah, I don't see Crothersville losing this game. Is there any way we can get them to play Dexter? I'm like, those two teams have played for so many years, and they've had so many good games over the years, and it would be a fun game this year. I hate that they're not playing this year.
The further the season goes, the more I wish it was on the schedule.
Hate it. But schedule that game for that last week, and those other two teams, Scott City and whoever Crothersville plays. Let's reschedule it. Let's just play that game that last week.
Speaking of Scott City, let's talk about Chaffee at Scott City.
Well, that's a rivalry too. Boy, those two teams don't like each other at all. But I think Scott City's just going to have too much. And I think, Scott City does not play well at home.
No, I don't get it.
They just don't. And Chaffee's coming in on a high. But I just think Scott City's just got a little bit too much. But it's a game that could be a little bit closer than what people think, just because Chaffee's going to get up for this game. I promise that. They will be ready to play. And if Scott City overlooks them in the least little bit, that'll be, which they've shown that they can do. So if that happens, I think that could make this game closer. But I think Scott City has too much for this one.
Yeah, I think Chaffee is going to, like you said, come in on a high. They got their first win. They hung 70 on a team. That's great. I think Scott City at the same time is going to be mad. I don't think they thought, hey, we've got an easy win against Charleston, but I thought there was going to be a closer game there. So, and every time Scott City loses at home, I think that just builds that just kind of like mad at ourselves feeling. And every time they get that, they kind of go into their next game trying to win it a lot more. So, yeah, I think Scott City's got this, no problem. But, I'm hoping for a close game in that circumstance. Moving on, Hayti at Pleasant Hope.
I don't know much about Pleasant Hope, but I know they give up a lot of points. And if you give up a lot of points and you're going to play Hayti, whether J.C. Ford is back or not, you got problems. Mm-hmm. And they've got problems. I think Hayti scores early and often, and I think Hayti rolls, gets their third win, and I think it's back on the winning side of things here. I think Hayti just dominates this game.
Yeah, I mean, physically, like what Hayti can do with the ball is just so impressive. Like you said, even if you don't have J.C. Ford, you've got weapons that you can work with. Mm-hmm. So I don't think they're probably going to have a problem with this game. I don't know anything about Pleasant Hope, but if Hayti, if it is a team that allows Hayti to score, they're going to score often.
Yeah.
And you just have to have an answer for that.
Yeah, the scores that Pleasant Hope's given up, they've given up lots of 50s plus on their side. And I'm like, that's not good if you're going up against Hayti, who can score, a lot. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with Hayti big.
Another game where I'm not really sure the outcome. Kelly at Solden International Studies.
Yeah, Solden is kind of the opposite. They struggle to score. I think their only win is a forfeit. So I'm going to say Kelly goes up there and kind of takes out some anger and stuff that they've had these last few weeks. Mm-hmm. That they've kind of taken it on the chin a couple of times, and I think they go up there and they have a get right game as well. I think that's a game that I think they're going to win this game and kind of make a statement on, and I think they're going to get a lot of points.
Yeah, I don't know how to feel about game circumstances like these because, I mean, of course, I'm not the one who schedules these games, but it's always disappointing to me when I look at the schedule and it's just like, I don't know where that school is. I don't know who they are. I wish Kelly would play a team that's more local so I can continue to gauge like what their skill level is with teams in the area. But I understand it in the sense that you're wanting to differentiate your schedule enough that you are getting those different circumstances. I just don't really understand it.
I think a lot of it is trying to get your points. If you play a bigger school, especially a bigger school, it's not very good that you can get a win against. You get a lot more points on your district, so maybe you get to host a district game. Soldan is, I think they're another inner city school up in St. Louis, and just I don't know. I think Soldan was Sumner, maybe. I think maybe Sumner used to have really good teams back in the 80s, but they're just a lot of those teams. Yeah, you just don't know what you're going to get year to year too. I mean, you may get one of those teams that are just really, really good, but then the way those St. Louis schools do, I mean, those kids transfer year after year. You never know what school they're going to. You never know what you're going to get when you schedule those teams. So, but right now it doesn't look like Soldan is very good. Like I said, their only win is a forfeit. They haven't scored many points. I think it's a good matchup for Kelly, one that they really need right now. So, you get to get that win and get those district points.
Moving on, let's talk about Poplar Bluff at Kennett.
Gosh, Kennett. Kennett had Sykeston on their schedule for 4 years, 6 years, something like that, and they dropped them and they pick up Poplar Bluff. I don't know if that was the right thing to do or not. Their schedule's just tough, and I think they've got Cape Central after this. I think Poplar Bluff wins this game. I think they're just physically better. I think Kennett's just going to continue to struggle here. They may go winless this year. I mean, I don't know who they're going to see in districts, but you would think that they're going to be not favored to win that game. So it's a tough year for Kennett right now. Poplar Bluff, I think, just is better.
How often can teams change their schedules?
Every 2 years. Typically they're on 2-year schedules. And I think I believe it's every even year your schedule changes. So I guess this would be their schedule probably for next year. They'll play they'll just do the home and home. So pretty much everybody's schedule usually stays the same. You do get some occasional 1-year contracts. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if this Kelly Soldan game might be a 1-year contract. I don't know for sure, but games like that typically can be a 1-year deal. The Hayti Pleasant Hope, those games where you're traveling pretty far, a lot of times you're just trying to fill a hole in your schedule. We got teams coming in. Donovan may come back next year, and you got Saxony Lutheran coming in the future, so you might be able to reschedule some games that way. But I think for the most part, these are 2-year schedules. So whatever schedule is this year, usually probably will be next year.
Yeah, this has been a hard schedule for Kennett too. And they were kind of a powerhouse team a couple of years ago, but yeah, I don't know if this was future proofing that they're like, well, we're going to have to start playing a harder schedule because we've got a better team, but that's kind of all just falling apart.
I think they've played Poplar Bluff the last few years. I think they have played them, but it's just tough that it would be a lot better to see, some other teams on your schedule than Sykeston and Cape Central to end your season with. But you never know when you're going to have these rebuilding years. And again, they've had a lot of injuries.
Sure.
That you weren't expecting. You're really dependent on some younger guys that maybe aren't just ready for that just yet. So, it's just a tough year for Kennett. It's just tough that you finish with Poplar Bluff and Cape Central going into districts. Usually you want to lighten your schedule a little bit and going into districts. And some of these teams kind of really load up going into districts. And that's that's a tough way to go for Kennett. But I think Poplar Bluff wins this game. I think Kennett just try to find some offense there, and I don't know. I don't have an answer for him.
Moving on. So this is going to be A-Corp Sports Game of the Week. Park Hills at Dexter.
Well, Dexter better be ready to play because Park Hills is going to come in a little ticked off, losing 50-0. But also that losing 50-0 kind of opens my eyes. I think Dexter can win this game. I don't think Park Hills is what they've been in the past. Matter of fact, I know they're not what they've been in the past. Now, saying that, they're still a good football team. They're still a good team. I think this will pretty much decide the top seed for district, which you want. You want to have that home field advantage. I think Dexter, they're healthy. They have the chance to have their first undefeated regular season since '86. That's still on the table for them. I think everything that Dexter has wanted this year is just lining up perfectly, and I think they're going to be fired up to come out in this game like they were Southern Boone, and I think they win this game.
Yeah, for Dexter, Park Hills has always been kind of that gateway to districts of just it's always a looming threat. But this year, I feel like Dexter's so much more favored. Just because they've looked complete every game they've played. They played a complete game every single game. And, against that Southern Boone team, we keep going back to that, but that was like their biggest challenge of the season. And everybody said, okay, you won that game, but be ready for Park Hills. I don't feel like Park Hills is a better team than Southern Boone at this point, though.
No. And I do go back to 2011. Dexter, I thought, had the better team going into the playoffs against Park Hills Central. Park Hills Central beat them in overtime. Got a 2-point conversion to beat them. That Dexter team was really talented. Probably the best team they've had up until this one. In the last 20 years. I thought they were really talented team, and Park Hills Central was not as talented as that Dexter team, but they were able to pull it off. They've got some really good coaches up there at Park Hills Central. I think they're going to come ready to play too, and Dexter's going to have to play well to win this game. But I think that what we talked about earlier, they've got so many different weapons. You've got just your defense is playing so well. I think this is maybe not a high scoring game, but I think Dexter's able to pull out a win and get that top seed for district and kind of set them up for maybe their first undefeated regular season since '86 if they can knock off Scott City in that last game.
Yeah, even if it ends up being like 21-35, something like that. In that. That's what I can kind of foresee. The thing about Dexter is too, like even when, because Jackson Howard threw 2 interceptions in that Southern Boone game, Dexter can just swap up their offense, start running it, and then they're successful at it too. So, I think for this game, like you said, Dexter's got to come to play, but you also got to recognize, just from our perspective, is that this is a team that can do it all.
You're right, and that's one thing that they've not. I didn't think last year's team. I thought last year's team was pretty good, but they couldn't really throw the ball very well. I just didn't think they were very good at throwing it. They've really improved on that this year, and the key for Dexter is just you can't turn the ball over because Park Hills Central will make you pay on those turnovers. And Park Hills, they can run the ball. They're very physical. They're going to be a very physical team, probably if not more physical than Southern Boone. I mean, they're very physical, and they're going to come in the game, and it's going to be a smash mouth, hard hitting game, just like the Southern Boone. It's going to be very similar to that, and I think that Dexter, having already had that game, the Park Hills coming off this 50-0 loss, they're going to come in a little angry. I would a good team's going to come in a little angry off that.
Yeah,
and but I just don't think that Valley's that much better than Dexter. So I really feel like Dexter has the upper hand in this. Just take care of your business. Don't turn the ball over and give them extra opportunities. I think Dexter wins this game. I think, and that would be a huge win for Dexter because it's been a while since they've beaten Park Hills.
I think too, the mindset that Chad Jamerson is bringing to this team is every game is the most important game. Certainly players are circling games on their calendar and being like, this is the most important game. But when you can take every team that you're playing against and say, do not let off the gas, this is the game we're focused on, I think that's a big part of the culture that you have to set to possibly go undefeated in your regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's had a lot of help with the schedule because, you can't, that's a rivalry game. And, you're going to come out, you're going to want to play hard against them because they've been kind of rivals for the last, for quite a while. Then you've got, Park Hills Central, who's, is been the team. They played, they're playing for state championships and stuff. They've knocked you out of the playoffs, I don't know how many times in the last decade. They're the top team in the district every year after year. So you don't have to circle that one. The kids already know. Then you got Scott City. If you beat Park Hills, that game's already, you've had a couple of good games with them the last few years, and then now all of a sudden you have a chance to have a perfect regular season. That's automatically they're going to be motivated for that. So he's doing a great job, and he's also got a lot of help from this schedule. That's these games are right there, and they're the kids know about them without him even having to say anything.
Yeah. So catch that game on A-Corp Sports. We're probably going to go live around 6:45. Pregame going live at 6:50, and we're excited for that one for sure. So I guess moving out of that, what have you kind of thought about this football season this year?
It's been nice to see teams like Dexter that haven't had, they've not had a lot of success in the last decade or so that really are having a good year. Because your Jackson, your Cape Centrals, they've had that success, but it's nice seeing the Dexters have success. And it's just really interesting seeing how the districts are playing out. Districts are different every year. You never know, Portersville, Class 1 one year, Class 2 the next, maybe Class 1 next year. Who knows? So it's kind of different how they do the districts, and you got different teams. So it's really interesting to see how that plays out. I looked at the Class 1, District 1 district, and there's 9 teams in it. And you look at that, Chaffee's like the 6 in that district. It's like, wow, okay. Well, there's going to be some winnable games for these teams coming into districts that maybe have not had a great year, but can end their year on a high note. I know Sykeston last year was able to beat Perryville in districts and get a win that was kind of unexpected there. And that's even though you lose your next game to Hillsborough or whoever it might be, I'm like, it was still just a positive way to end the year. Hey, we got to win in districts. And so I'm really interested to see how these district seedings are going to line up here in the next couple of weeks. And I think it's going to be a really interesting end of the year here.
Postseason is so interesting to me because, for college, like postseason is usually a pretty depressing time for a lot of teams. But for these teams in the area, it's just kind of like a breath of new life where it's like, you do bad in regular season. That's a crappy 9 weeks. But all of a sudden, districts rolls around, and then it's like, okay, but you've got another chance. You can maybe not make a run, but you can do something with it. And, that I feel like that's a good motivator for a lot of teams in the area.
Oh, absolutely. And that's this district, the way this district path is. When I was in school back in I believe it was 1990, Dexter was 0-7 going into, and your last 3 games were district play. Dexter was 0-7. We won the last 3 games and ended up going to the playoffs with a 3-7 record. and almost beat St. Genevieve at St. Genevieve in the sectional game. St. Genevieve ended up making a big run, and it was 21-13. They hit a big play there in the fourth quarter to knock Dexter off, but they were 0-7. And we're able to. So in high school, it is a lot more fun because you do have that ability, even if you've not had a good year, to make a little run there, and all of a sudden your season just changes. And that's one of the best things about high school football is just what you do on week one doesn't necessarily mean that's the end of your year. I mean, you can have a good year, and it's always fun to see when districts come around.
It's a fun mentality to go into because I feel like it carries that same weight that when you're a fan of an NFL team, seeing that in the hunt graphic on, like Monday mornings, things like that, where it's just like, okay, we could still do this.
Yeah.
And I think it comes with that excitement of, hey, let's say you're Malden and it's just like terrible year for you, whatever. Come districts, you still got a chance. Mm-hmm. So make the most of it.
Yeah.
Everybody's in the hunt.
Yeah, it also goes the other way too, though. Say you're Dexter and you're 9-0, and all of a sudden you meet up against a team in the district quarterfinals or I guess it'd be the district semifinals. Say you're meeting up against a St. Gen team who's maybe the 4 seed or something, and they knock you off. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, we had this great year, and then all of a sudden we're not. We lose this game. Yeah, it can go both ways, but it's just exciting, and you've got to be ready to play every week when district comes around because you cannot let up at all, even if you think you're a 2 versus a 7 and you're the 2 seed. Oh yeah, we're going to win this game. It doesn't always work that way.
All right. I think that covers everything for this week. Super excited about going into week 8. We are on the tail end of the regular season. Any final thoughts, Dave?
No, just a lot of rivalries this week. I'm excited about some of these games. Matter Sykeston, East Prairie Charleston, the Dexter Park Hills, Chaffee Scott City. Those are some really good games that are going to be on the schedule this week. I'm really looking forward to seeing these games.
Definitely excited to see. And thank you for joining us on the SEMO Sports Zone. And we'll catch you next week.